V-Geets, it's Breezy. So, did you know Black History Month started out as Negro Week in the 1920s when blacks celebrated the birthdays of President Abraham Lincoln and abolitionist Frederick Douglass? Then in 1970, black professors and students at Kent State University in Ohio proposed a 2-month official celebration of Black history. In 1990, only months after the wall came down in Berlin, the celebration spread to the Afro-German and Black community in Deutschland. To me, Black History Month is like hip-hop because it symbolizes our progress, our beauty, and our pain. It represents the fight fought among generations and nations for the right to include and celebrate our history and our struggle as Black people. And it's a reminder that we as Western society must constantly work to discover and honor Black stories every month of the year.
I got an excess of black bile, high irascibility, contemplating checking myself into facility, mental ability clearly affected,
deep in the dumps, down and dejected.
I've been in low power mode, in low power mode, been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear. I've been in low. I've been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear.
Hey, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that guest spot that I did for Fam FM. So cool. They asked, do you want to speak on Black History Month and what it means to you? And I was like, yes, I do. So Fam FM is on Alex Berlin, which is like a media radio station. So I love opportunities like that. But welcome back to this podcast, Low Power Mode with Breezy. That's me, Breezy. So happy to be talking with you, well, more like to you, but doing my thing on the podcast and connecting with you. It's been so awesome, you know, from emojis to comments on stuff to like full out like sharing. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's cool. I like what we're doing here. So if it's your first time joining us, this is my safe space to discuss music, TV, and film that lies at the intersection of Black, queer, POC, intersectional feminist, among other transgressive experiences. Kicking off the music section today. Music. Okay, kicking off the music section today, we have none other than Little Simz, Simbiatu. Now, if you're not up on Little Simz, I'm so glad to catch you up because Little Simz is one of these rappers who's been out here doing it since like preteen, you know, just like when the technology looked a lot different. Lil Simz was laying down vocals and killing it with rap lyrics, and it's so cool that throughout the years she has just gained more and more of a following, and she represents so much of what I love about hip hop and what I don't see anymore in hip hop. So I'm super happy to be talking about Little Simz today. And her latest album that came out only a few months ago, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert. I don't even know like how to start. Just know that this is a very fully developed artist who's going to take you through a lot of different styles. It's all going to be, you know, rap, hip hop, but for the most part, right? You're going to be taken through a lot of different styles and a lot of like cultural feels. Lil Simz plays with a band, samples some classic records. So it's kind of all over the place sonically, but like just so dominant and amazing. And what's so cool is that she addresses her issues with her father so head on this album. And wow, like you're already kind of vulnerable being a black woman in hip hop, but you're going so deep into your heart and putting your most vulnerable shit out there. That's what I try to do. So I just love Simbiatu, Lil Simz. Lil Simz is from the Yoruba culture, which, if you don't know, is a culture that is like geographically parts of Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. Excuse me. Lil Simz was, I think, born in the UK though. Definitely like a British artist. And it was cool to see that recently Lil Simz got recognized at the Brit Awards for Best New Artist, which is kind of laughable. Yeah, I think a lot of people agreed with me in the comments because Lil Simz has been out here hustling. Like, for the ones who know what's up, like, she not a new artist, but gotta appreciate these shows for bringing these artists onto a bigger platform. And it was so amazing. Not only was her performance so incredible, dance-wise, style-wise, just like gang, like having these, like dancers doesn't even do it justice. Like they're like standing backflips right out the gate, and she's incredible. And then so she performed, and then she went up to receive her award, and she brought her mother with her, and she's like, "Look what you did, Mom," in her British accent. And oh wow, just so heartwarming and special to see this Black woman who has been out here. And her message during her speech was like, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, like you can make it. You just need to stay focused and not give up on your dreams. And so, oh my God, it was so inspiring. I'm already inspired. I didn't need that, but to get it is just like, wow. And manifestations wise, I definitely want to work with Lil Simz one day. So I'm going to say that, speak that, put that out there, and envision it and hope that it comes true. But just want to mention the work ethic. Like, there were so many projects that Little Simz has done, and I think Bandcamp is the best place to discover certain artists' discographies, because it's kind of like a combination of their SoundCloud and their Spotify, like what they wanted to release really publicly and what was kind of like working on their sound sort of stuff. But all her stuff is up and out there, and it's so dope. So on Wikipedia, they mentioned A Curious Tale of Trials and Persons. That was 2015. Then there was Stillness in Wonderland in 2016. Then there was Gray Area in 2019. And this is when I became hip to Little Simz. Like, as soon as I hit Berlin in fall 2019, I was hearing Gray Area songs like Venom and Boss everywhere. And I had an opportunity to DJ this hip hop party, and I was playing a ton of Little Simz. I was like fully up on it around that time. Excuse me. And yeah, and I was just writing down her projects and taking notes. And when I wrote down the acronym for Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, her newest album, it spells Simbi. It's Simbi. It's Simbiatu. It's her name. It's her actual name. I was like, oh my God, Easter egg. Oh, I love it. I love the hidden treasures. Like that to me is art, art, art. It's like Solange level art, you know? Do nothing without intention. Nothing without intention. Hold up. It's like that level. So I can't plug the album enough. Sometimes I might be introvert. Check out the music videos on YouTube. Um, it's not even one of those albums where I have like 2-3 tracks that I heavily fuck with and then everything else is like album cuts and it's good, but it's not. It's like everything is phenomenal. The interludes are great. It's like a ride, you know, that you're taking. She really brings you on an experience, and she collaborates with artist Cleo Sol, who's another UK R&B artist, and they did a track on Gray Area called Selfish, and it has a beautiful aesthetic and music video attached to it, and they go so well together. Lil Simz like sort of lower register, like raspier voice, and Cleo Sol's kind of like clear, higher R&B choruses. Oh, such a nice combination, reminiscent of like, you know, J-Lo and Ja Rule, or like Ashanti and Ja Rule. Some of these like classic Kanye and, you know, the women who sung in his tracks. Yeah, definitely check it all out. So they do Selfish, and then on sometimes it might be Introvert, they do, oh my God, what's it called? Their song together is Woman. It's so good. It's so good. The song is called Woman. I'm not even gonna give. I'm not. You have to listen to it. You have to listen to it. It's so beautiful. It's so what we need in hip hop right now. I'm saying, like, Lil Simz has, you know, I hate to compare artists to other artists sometimes because it's like, let them just be who they are. But like in terms of the spirit behind it, it feels kind of like with the spirit of Lauryn Hill. Not so much because like I feel like Lil Simz is a true MC and Lauryn Hill is like definitely MC, but definitely like singer. So among many differences, there is that, but I feel like this kind of, introverted, kind of like telling it like it is and being vulnerable and feeling pain. It's just a beautiful record. The artwork, everything is so good. I can't say enough good shit about Symbiatu. And yeah, and I highly recommend that you jump on the journey. I'm going to talk about one more track, which is oh my God, what's it called? Point and Kill. This song is like picture like 70s Nigerian African jam band, like Fela Kuti type sound as a sample for a rap song. It's so good. The music video fucking slays. The song itself is amazing. When it first came out, I just could not get enough. And yeah, like these tracks, they're so well like referenced and developed. You know what I mean? Like I think a good rapper hits those samples that, you know, those old funk or R&B samples and translates it into hip hop, not only by laying down lyrics over beats, which I see rappers doing, but translating even like the original concept and then like just being reflective as fuck. I don't know. It's so cool. She does a great job at that. So I'm gonna end it here because I could go on and on, but you definitely gray area, and sometimes I might be introvert. If you want to just jump right in, so yeah, definitely listen to Little Simz, and that concludes our music section. Television. Hey, 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 it's Fat Albert. Oh my God, no. Welcome back to Low Power Mode with Breezy. This is the TV section. And I thought that for this particular TV section of this particular episode, why don't we focus on a singular episode versus an entire series? So, I recently have become obsessed with the work of Tananarive and Stephen Barnes, Tananarive Do and Stephen Barnes. And basically, Tananarive Do is an author, a science fiction writer, a horror writer, and she teaches currently at UCLA, and she teaches a course. Get this, because if you know me, you know how big of a Jordan Peele fan I am. She teaches a course called The Sunken Place: Racism, Survival, and Black. What did I write here? And the Black horror aesthetic. Okay. The Sunken Place: Racism, Survival, and the Black horror aesthetic. Now, if I'm a college student at UCLA, I am elbowing my way into this course. Like, there's no way I'm not taking this class. So that's one of many things that she does. But again, author of short stories, fiction, novels, and she is married to Stephen Barnes, who is a TV writer, also story writer. And basically, I became aware of Tananarive. I know it's not Rive, but for some reason I want to do that. So it's Tananarive Do. I came across her in the social impact section of this website that they put up for the movie Candyman, where they talk about, I think I mentioned it when I talked about Candyman on this podcast. It's not the first time I came across her, definitely not. But that was the first time I consciously was like, I need to know more about who this person is, because a lot of what she's saying and talking about is what I'm into. And so I did some research, and I saw that she and her husband wrote an episode of The Twilight Zone, the Jordan Peele 2019 version. So, okay, two married Black writers doing a Jordan Peele Twilight Zone episode? Yes. So I remember watching Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone when it first came out because I was such a stan. And the episode that really stuck out to me was the one with Kumail Nanjiani, who we were just talking about him in Lovebirds with Issa Rae. He plays this comedian, and as he starts to incorporate different people from his life into his set, he loses those people. So they vanish. So it's such a great metaphor for be careful of using other people in your art. And I felt like it really just hit the nail on the head, or hit the ball out of the park, whatever. And then for some of the other episodes in the first season, I I liked them, and I saw what made them Twilight Zone episodes, but I didn't end up finishing it. And then when I saw that Tananarive and Stephen Barnes wrote, Tananarive Due and Stephen Barnes wrote this episode, I was like, oh shit, okay, I have to get serious and like actually watch this show. So what I want to talk about for TV today is the Twilight Zone, Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone from 2019, the episode called A Small Town. And just some background, I became obsessed with Twilight Zone like the original Twilight Zone very recently when I had to come back to the States for a couple months because my health was declining. And when you're sick in bed, and also like racial horror, like genre of film already being established, watching Hitchcock in the Twilight Zone really helped me. I don't know why. I haven't really dug into that, but watching these psychological horror or thriller films really did it for me. And I was hungry for it, like really, really, really hungry. Kind of like Black Mirror and stuff like that. But then watching The Vault, and Hulu took it off, so I was only able to get through like the first 4 seasons, but still, like, we're talking, I think there's at least late 20s numbers of episodes each season on the original Twilight Zone. Sometimes they go into 30s. I want to say, like, it's a ton of episodes. And the formula is either Rod Serling or the main group of writers would write an episode, but oftentimes they were adaptations of other stories, short stories. Like they did some Ray Bradbury stuff. Like you would see other people's work that the Twilight Zone became a platform for. So not only did I develop a weird sexual attraction to Rod Serling, but also I developed a lust for this type of storytelling where it's often minimal in the production and relying more on the device or the reveal, the big reveal. And I just absolutely fell in love with the show. So yeah, so I had to mention that before I mentioned. And Stephen Barnes, he's been around in TV for a while, and he worked on the original Twilight Zone. He was doing writing, short story writing. I know I want to shout out their podcast. So of course, they're such a power couple. Tananarive Due and Stephen Barnes have a podcast called where is it? Life Writing, Write for Your Life. And if you're into screenwriting and that sort of stuff, like it's so good. They talk about like writing your own life, or even writing what you want to happen in your life, using yourself as your main character, this kind of thing. I will drop the link in the show notes. But they did it's a recent podcast. They just dropped it this year, and they did an episode on their episode of the Twilight Zone. They did an episode called A Small Town. And the story behind this, I have to share with you. It's so amazing. So Tananarive, she teaches Black horror and Afrofuturism at UCLA. And when Get Out came out, she formed her curriculum for the Sunken Place class. A journalist reached out to her, asked about it. She was like, yep, no, it's happening. That made her actually write the curriculum. And then she, the journalist put it out there, and Jordan Peele found her on Twitter, liked her on Twitter, and she, of course, had already liked him on Twitter, so it allowed her to send him a DM. So she shot her shot, like, like such a baller, and wrote to him and was like, hey, I'm teaching this class, and he said something like, haha, it would be so funny if I showed up. So they orchestrated Jordan Peele coming to like the first day of this course, and they had the whole thing planned out. They had him in like a hoodie and a hat, so he was unrecognizable. And he was in the class, and so she showed a clip, and she made sure to say the line they practiced. So what do you think the director was trying to say? Jordan Peele raises his hand. She calls on him. He stands up, reveals himself, and the class goes crazy. And she talks about how they treated him, not only did they treat him like the celebrity he is, but on top of that, they had been studying science fiction stories, W.E.B. Du Bois, and like all sorts of stuff coming before this, so that there was context. So it was just such a cool story to hear about. And that is how Stephen Barnes and Tananarive pitched for the Twilight Zone, the first season, which they were in production for. Apparently the first season had more of a like more on the nose social justice slant. So the story that they wanted to tell just didn't really fit into the overarching theme of this season. So then when they got a second season, Monkey Paw reached out. Monkey Paw Productions is Jordan Peele's production company, reached out to Tananarive Due and Stephen Barnes and was like, let's do this, go ahead, pitch to me. So they do this episode. I hope this wasn't too much background, but I think it's so fascinating and fun to hear about the behind the scenes of like what ends up on the silver screen, or like Hollywood, whatever. So in the actual episode, it takes place in a fictional town called Littleton. They do all their shooting in Vancouver, I'm pretty sure, for this particular season of The Twilight Zone. So it's this like beautiful snowy town. It's like winter. And right off the bat, we get the story. Basically, the mayor of the town was this badass black woman who like stood up for the little guy, and there was a highway being built that was going to pass the town and not make it a destination. And so she was fighting for that, and then she tragically died, and her husband is living in the church, like the town church, in the steeple kind of attic apartment. And so and like a little bit more background in case you haven't seen this. The main character is Damon Wayans Jr. So I was like, oh my God, this guy looks so familiar. It's not one of the Wayans brothers from the 90s. It's one of their nephews, Damon Wayans Jr. So cool to see him as the main character. And okay, so, and then you have the pastor, and the pastor is a black woman. She has like an Oprah like presence. And then there's a diner I don't know if she owns it, but she runs it. A Latina woman with a preteen son, Emilio. Jason is the name of the main character, and I think Nichelle is the name of the pastor. So essentially, Jason's wife passed away, and there's this stand-in mayor, Mayor Conley, who is this like classic, white guy who like doesn't care about the issues and kind of takes advantage of his role as stand-in mayor and like takes credit for stuff where credit isn't due. So Mayor Conley, like, you definitely get this vibe where in a way the town has lost, not just because of the mayor's passing, but because of what was like waiting on the other side. So the stakes are already set here just by virtue of us knowing what the story is, which I think is awesome and brilliant. It's like great storytelling. Obviously, these people are pros, like amazing. I'm looking here for my notes on the episode, but I can't find them and I don't really need them. So what happens is Jason asks the pastor if he can kind of clean up in that church attic, and he finds this model of the town, and it's exact replica. And there's some sort of like gear functioning and stuff going on, so it's like powered somehow. So he finds the model, and previous to this, the son of the diner owner, Emilio, comes in, brings him a muffin, shows him some of his drawings because he's an artist, and he said, "Why do you live up here?" And he's like, "I will feel. Oh, my wife thought I'd feel closer to God." So we have this like closer to God church attic element going on already. Then once he finds the model, he realizes that anything he does in the to or within the scope of the model happens just outside on the main street, outside his window. So we have suddenly the character who feels disempowered becomes completely empowered and is playing God, quote unquote. I love it. 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 I love it already so much because we've seen this play out before. But to have all the main characters be like people of color and Black folks, and to have it be within this realm of the Twilight Zone, it's really cool. It's really cool to see. It's very well orchestrated. So essentially, he does something nice. There's this whole thing with the pastor's nail polish. Is it orange? Is it peach? It's peach. So he takes the nail polish and paints. He hears that the diner needs to be repainted. So he paints it himself. And the next day, everyone's looking like, damn, this whole thing is painted. Who did this? And so, an example of him using his power for good. And then he, fills in a pothole. Another example of him using his power for good. But then, interestingly enough, Mayor Connolly starts to take credit for all of the things that our God, quote unquote, Jason, is doing. So he's politicizing the cleanup sort of work that's being done around town to his favor in order to get elected, not reelected, elected. And yeah, it's this story develops so well. So then once he starts to take credit more aggressively, Jason drops a little pebble that turns out to be, in the scope of the model, a meteor on the mayor's nice ass, Porsche or whatever car. So funny. And then he like flips out. he loses his mind. Everyone in the town's like, what's happening? And then he again takes a beat and then politicizes it and says, well, we'll get through this together. Da, 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 da. Like, kind of. So there's these multiple, and then there's another moment where Jason starts to terrorize him, the mayor. And it's like, oh shit, is our God going too far? A good Twilight Zone episode always dealt with that question of like, there's like starting out circumstances and then something very significant changes within like the realm of science fiction. And then where are we emotionally and dramatically? And I think that this episode is such a great Twilight Zone episode within the canon of Twilight Zone episodes. Everyone's included because it does what it needs to do. So things escalate. Jason tries to make the sign to add like a bunch of lights and make it really, really nice so people know to come there off the highway. And then everyone's electricity goes out, and he owns up to doing it. And he has to show the town that he knows like how it works. So he proves it to them. And the mayor, of course, wants to use it for bad. And so in an act of classic masculinity, but also with a twist, he says like, sorry, babe, I failed you or something like this, takes off his wedding band, puts it on the model so that it is now there in real life. And then he fights with the mayor physically and destroys the model. So, and we kind of end with this shot of the giant wedding band that the reporter is talking about as like the biggest solid piece of gold that's been found, and which gives the town a reputation and something to feel of value and of worth. So in the end, he does save the town, and it's just not how we expected it to look. He wasn't able to do it within his own human nature. And that's another thing. A good Twilight Zone episode deals with human nature. It's human nature and like science fiction circumstances. So, so cool. So cool. I highly suggest you check this episode out. It's so well done. If you were a fan of the original Twilight Zone, you'll love this episode. If you haven't seen the original Twilight Zone with Rod Serling, highly recommend it. I'll spend another day talking about it because I'm such a nerd about it, but I've already said all the things. So watch Twilight Zone. And I wanted to mention as well how much of a pleasure it was listening to the podcast episode. It's called Entering the Twilight Zone, on the life writing, Write for Your Life. I think it's episode 4 of Stephen Barnes and Tananarive Du's podcast, Life Writing, Write for Your Life. Definitely, if you've ever dreamed of screenwriting, writing for the screen, like I have for a while. So I'm starting to actively listen, and that first phase of like, I decided I want to do something. So it's like, you don't have to like jump into it like day one. You can study and do some research. So I'm in that phase with screenwriting. So if you're out there and you're looking for that kind of support, they offer so much support for free, for paid, and obviously support Black artists. Pay them if you can afford it. For me, the podcast is such a blessing, and I feel like that's not the last time we'll talk about Tananarive Du, just because her story is so fascinating, but there's a lot more I want to cover on this episode, so I'm going to end it there. Again, plugging Tananarive Do, follow her on Twitter. Stephen Barnes, Jordan Peele, Monkey Paw Productions, Twilight Zone, Rod Serling. Just giving you keywords here. Okay, that's going to end the TV section, and I'm going to take a quick break and see you over in the film section. Movies. Film. Hello, hello, hello. We are back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay, so I'm like, stop doing things that people can sue you for. So, welcome back to Low Power Mode podcast with Breezy. Oh my God. Okay, so we're in side B. We're in the back half of the podcast. And this is going to be Janet Jackson focused. Now, I'm not going to talk about Janet Jackson's music and its impact and stuff like that. That I'm going to save for when I feel ready to do that. I don't feel ready to do that. And that's why I'm going to talk about Janet Jackson. So, okay. Here we go. Had this on my chest ever since I saw the FX produced New York Times presents Malfunction, the dressing down of Janet Jackson. So this is a 1 hour episode on the New York Times Presents series. They did 2 episodes on Britney Spears. One was something framing Britney, and one was I forget the other one. I would love to talk about that too at some point. But basically, Britney Spears has been stuck in a conservatorship, meaning her father has been in control of her every move for a long ass time, and nobody really knew about it until her fan base started helping bringing it to light. And these 2 episodes really helped they really helped her court case in getting out of her conservatorship. So we're talking about TV that changes lives, changes pop stars' lives, the most famous people you would never think have issues like this, their lives. And of course, women in POC and queer folks are but okay, gonna stay focused. So I want to focus on Janet's story and how it fits into my little brain. Okay, so I remember as a kid having, it was probably one of those Now, remember those Now 5, Now 6, Now 7, and it's the popular music. It's a pop music mixtape. So I'm pretty sure I had one with All For You on it. It's all for you. This sort of Janet in her, definitely not in her early phases, but not in her much later phases either. Still an era, early 2000s. So I remember loving it, but I remember not hearing Janet and not consciously thinking about it. But once I saw this episode, essentially with the message of Janet's been played, I was like, okay, I not only do I care about women and entertainers, but Black ones and ones from the Jackson family. I mean, damn. So this really appealed to me. So I watched that episode, and it basically, to sum it all up, it doesn't really give any answers or anything. It adds more information to a confusing situation, but we all know about Nipplegate. Janet Jackson, 2004, she was performing with Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake removed a part of her bra and there showed her her boob with a nipple ring on it. So it wasn't even like a titty. It was like a jeweled titty. We're talking like under a second or something that she was exposed. And ever since then, okay, so not only did like the FCC, like the Family Commission and these sorts of groups put in hundreds of thousands of complaints, about the Super Bowl and about like obviously politicizing her for being this, raunchy Jezebel, when it's like, this is Janet Jackson and she clearly it was not part of her gig. And the sad part is this is happening today on stages constantly. Cardi B is a great example of someone whose body has been exposed. And yes, there have been those complaints, but she's been able to continue having a career. Whereas what happened to Janet happened systemically. These complaints were basically they sued the NFL for, indecent exposure or whatever. And so the NFL had all these fees and fines to pay. Now, of course, the NFL wanted to blame and place all the blame on Janet. So they did that. But what happened was it affected everything. It affected her career negatively down to like radio plays. Like radio would certain, like there's this like clear audio, and they had specifically banned Janet from being played. So there's a reason why we don't hear Janet Jackson on the radio. It's because she was banned essentially after that NFL, like after the court case specifically, it's about money at the end of the day. And this really hit me hard, It's like, oh my God, this is someone who I owe so much to, being like a Black kind of femme entertainer. I mean, she also did this like really cool androgyny thing, especially early on. She was with the Gloves and the Blazers, obviously Mike's little sister, but still, she really, wow, she had such, she was already taking control before her album Control of who she wanted to be and how she wanted to present herself. And I think that's the tragedy of, if you're looking at Janet as an artist and the type of artist she is and her accomplishments and achievements throughout time, to have her career stunted in this very, very real way by some of the most powerful institutions in the country, when she's just not that type of artist. Like, like she did absolutely, she was free with her sexuality, but like that was not the plan, So that was where I consciously registered and was like, okay. And something great about that little New York Times special is that they show that on Twitter, people started hashtag Janet Jackson Appreciation Day. So on this past hashtag Janet Jackson Appreciation Day, instead of celebrating the Super Bowl or giving any energy to that, my mom and I watched the 4-part documentary that Janet put out on herself, about herself. Now, it was produced by, or, on the platforms of A&E and Lifetime. So that's a choice in terms of the type of platform that's going to produce a doc on Janet. But I had heard about it in January, and I was like, I had envisioned buying her vinyls, and because we have our record player set up, and like really, getting down to her music and stuff. But it ended up being better to just watch the documentary. So It was so interesting. Okay, so it's called Janet Jackson, and the way it's marketed is this is her telling her story, that there's been things about her life and her career, but this is her telling her own story. What was so interesting and a bit heartbreaking was Janet, I don't know, heartbreaking, but also like I get it because of I imagine what she's been through. The It focused a lot on the men in her life. It focused on what she was dealing with. And I want to know what she's really dealing with, you know? But I didn't get, we didn't really focus on the music, on her process, on aspects of her joy. I think we focused a lot on aspects of her pain, and that's so necessary. I think, yeah, it was just surprising certain aspects. So I'm going to get deeper in, but her relationship, okay, so her relationship, and we're talking 9 kids, you know, poor in Gary, Indiana, growing up in a tiny house, in what we would consider a tiny house today. Like, you know, like 9 kids. That Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, and a very strict father. And so we all know the Jackson story, like music became their work. It became their work. And so she was working as a part of the Jackson family, on behalf of the Jackson family, for the Jacksons for a very long time, like since she was a baby, and is documented on TV. And oh man, it's just like wild, you know, when she was cast on, I think it was Good Times, she showed up to the set and they didn't tell her they were gonna like bind her chest, and then later on TV, you know, issues around weight and her image, and you know, also that era, that cocaine chic, fat free 90s era. So terrible to be a teen, a public Black woman teen, like on TV at that time. Like, that's a lot. That's so much to deal with. But you know, Michael's success was really popping off, and he lost JoJo. Like, he was like, I cannot have my dad manage me. So he left Joe Jackson. And Janet, she was, as she put it, all in her music, all in her album, she wanted to take control. The first line of Control is, since I was 17, I did what people told me. And it's like, oh my God, I love an artist. And she's so young at this point when she puts out Control in 86. So just being that vulnerable. And you're part of the Jackson family. Like, wow, what a badass, you know? Like, not in a disrespectful way, but she was like, you know, Daddy, I got this and I don't need you. I don't like working with you, and I'm going to do it my way. So she killed it with Control. Control is so exciting. It's like some of the hits on the not only the 80s aesthetic, you know, that like super long-tailed snare, that electronic sounding, these electronic instrument sounds are prevalent in a lot of these hits. But she had like 5 hit singles off of this one album in 86. Like, that's insane. That's so insane just right out the gate, killing it and telling her story, claiming her narrative. That's incredible. Then she starts to work with, or maybe they were already Jimmy Jam and Lewis, what's his name, Terry Lewis. They were working in Minneapolis with Janet on Control, Rhythm. I think they did like her big albums with her. And so, and then she comes out with Rhythm Nation, and she's like I'm a soldier she's like social justice warrior. That's the spirit of Rhythm Nation. And I really want to, like, zooming out for a sec. I didn't know Janet's story, so I really want her story to be known and to be recirculated among the younger population. So it's really important, and it tells us a lot. It informs us a lot about fame and about culture and about music and body shaming, and like, it really does. So yeah, Rhythm Nation, iconic choreography. Got to see a little bit more of the process of that in the other documentary that I watched. Shout out to Dennis Queen, sending me that BBC documentary. They did a documentary called Janet Jackson Taking Control, and they released that in the UK in 2011. So it's just an hour long on YouTube, but it was nice to follow up the really emotional ride of her 4-part documentary that she made and put out. That's that's laden with men trying to control her. It was a nice compliment to have a more general look at her music and like, you know, an interview with her choreographer or the producers. So okay, so where are we? So we're at Rhythm Nation. Then she meets Renee. She gets so this, talk about trauma. So her first relationship is with James DeBarge. He's struggling with addiction. She has to go out and find him and getting calls, you know, to take him to the hospital and that sort of stuff. And it's reminding me of some things from my past. And she, you know, she dealt with all that and was just so loving but, you know, eventually was able to draw the line that we all have to draw with addicts that we love. And then her next relationship was with Renee. And Renee was sort of like definitely a man who had a lot of like feminine and had like the feminine in him, you know, and they had a very tender relationship, you could tell. And she really let him in creatively. Like, he was someone in film and kind of like in certain circles. So they met, and then she worked with him on a very intimate level, like songwriting with him, making music videos where he's directing. And well, I say she let him, I mean, it's more complicated than that, but it was really interesting. In both of her marriage, she was married to James DeBarge and she was married to Renee, and both of those marriages happened in secret. And she talks about how marrying James DeBarge as the only way to, you know, to get married is the only way to get out from under Joe Jackson's control. So, wow, you know, in terms of intersectionality and like the experience of a Black woman with a hyper controlling and public father, and coming from this overworked family, and it's just wild to think about all this. It's so wild. Like, and I haven't fallen in love with her as the artist fully because I've only like I've only been watching the same like 10 to 12, you know, music videos on YouTube. I haven't like been hit with her discography yet. And so I can't even speak to her music, but her story, you know, there's a lot of heartbreak in here. So she's with Renee for 9 years, and they show a clip where he's like rolling the tape and she's with her mom, and there's like she asks him to turn the tape off, and he doesn't just do it. He kind of like keeps rolling, and she has to like take a tone. No, we don't need this, Janet. You don't need this. So she knew, so she got out of that shit. And meanwhile, she's writing about it. She's putting it into her albums. She has Janet. She has, I'm probably fucking up the order, The Velvet Rope, All For You. Okay, so here's an aspect that I found super interesting. So Michael Jackson, right? Now, being someone who's born AFAB, like, and recognize, like, people read me as feminine, as a femme, as a woman. So coming from that experience, knowing that the majority of the women in this goes beyond just the category of women, but so many of the non-cis men, folks in my life, and highlighting women, all kinds of women, the way that we're treated in society is like, very piece of meat-esque. And so it was heartbreaking to hear that. This is random, but it was heartbreaking to hear that her family called they called her Donk as a nickname. They would call her like Pig, Donkey, like all these fucked up names, because they wanted to, make her feel like she was fat. Like, ugh, fucked up. Anyway, where were we? Okay, so being someone who believes folks when they say they've been sexually assaulted or raped or physically assaulted, especially women, but I can't even say that, gay men, like it just goes on and on and on. So having been confronted with this reality most of my life and been close to it, having it happen to me, like all this stuff, I believe, I'm going to say this firmly, I believe, I forget their names now, but the boys who came forward about Michael Jackson, I believe them fully. And I think that yes, Michael Jackson was the king of pop, and he also sexually abused, and raped young boys. And we have to acknowledge that. So what's wild is that you see within Janet telling her story, this, you see that it's happening. You see her in denial. It's wild. She's like, after, it's like, she's like, she can name the specific point at which he started behaving differently, especially towards her. And they were like two peas in a pod, those brother and sister that really were super tight. And, on the younger side, and the singer, like up front, like front vocalist, dancing, there's so many moments of nostalgia for her relationship with Michael, but there's a clear moment that she speaks to when he starts to behave differently. And it's kind of known among even Michael fandom that the Scream video that they did together was his kind of cry for help, his kind of using her career to even out his reputation after these allegations were made in court. And apparently while they were filming, I had already known that it was one of the most expensive videos of all time to make, the Scream video with Janet and Michael. But what I didn't know was that he shot his scenes on a completely different, some of his scenes on a completely different set than Janet, and she would not be allowed to go to his set or like watch him shoot his scenes. I mean, what? I get it. I get her nature. But part of me wants her to be like, yeah, that was when I knew something was up. But instead, she goes with this narrative, not Michael, he doesn't have it in him. And this is upsetting. You know, during her documentary, the Janet Jackson Lifetime one that just came out recently, she says she goes by the Neverland Ranch one time, and we know this is where he's done most of the abuse, and it all makes sense. And so she goes one time, she remembers going with like Randy, and it was awkward, and you know, something had changed. So I wish there was a world in which she could, but I think, you know, being raised as Jehovah's Witness and having such a big and tight family, like you just don't air dirty laundry like that. So I get it. It just sucks because it's another, it's almost like a pop star who's protecting something that Janet, you know, has done, has really stood up for the gay community and AIDS, the communities that have been disproportionately affected by AIDS. So I don't know. It's just so complex, you know, like Michael obviously was gay. He couldn't really come out. He kind of like took out his sexual urges on these little boys, and like I think I the way I think is like we're all within these trauma cycles and we're trying to be cycle breakers, but I don't excuse what he did. I get why he did it. I don't excuse it. And I wish someone like Janet at this point, given her personal experience with this shift in his behavior, could own up to that being true. So, okay. I won't go too further down, but it's just like wild to me. It's so wild to me. I get it, but on the same hand, I don't. And our society protected him so much, protected his legacy. I'll never forget driving in 2019 across the country right around that documentary came out. And there was a billboard that had Michael Jackson's face, and it just said innocent across his mouth. That's it. There was no like funding organization. I was like, who paid for this? What? It's wild how much he's protected. It's similar to Cosby, you know. And so for someone like Janet, who was able to step out from under Joe Jackson, her controlling father, step out from under the addicted husband, step out from under the controlling creative husband, and you know, later on she has a relationship with Jermaine Dupri, and then she leaves him. She knows her worth. Like she knows she can do that, but she just can't entertain. She can't deal with the trauma. And I imagine someone like Janet, I imagine she has not. I would be really interested to know, like, if she has been in therapy. because I could see her not being in therapy, and I could see that this behavior is because of that, like because she's unable to kind of put all the pieces together for herself. But yeah, none of this Michael stuff takes away from her legacy, and like she said, she's guilty by association in her documentary, so that's tough, you know. That's super tough to be overshadowed not only by his career on a positive note, you know, he was more dominant, but then on the level of him being involved in such grotesque offenses, and her with this squeaky clean record. It's like, oh God. Yeah. Wow. So what else do I want to, okay, so I want to move on from the Michael part. So now I just have the utmost respect for Janet. I think, as I said before, she needed to tell her story. And maybe I can watch it again with a less critical, like maybe I can watch it again and be like more compassionate towards her story. I already feel compassionate towards her story, but you know, there is that generational difference, and that you know, that difference between wanting racial justice and writing about it using broad strokes, and like going in and like naming things. And you know, I will never not appreciate her legacy. It's just interesting. I like to look at things with this lens of, okay, but is she also protecting an abuser? Like, yeah, I can hold both at the same time. And I think that's, you know, I asked about like Cosby, can you separate the art from the artist? I don't think I don't know if it's possible to do, but holding things to be true at the same time, I think is the real, you know, and that's what the artists want too, not to be canceled, but to have this chapter in your story. Now, no artist really wants to have this chapter in their story, a history of sexual assault or whatever, but we need to be calling these men out for this. You know, Michael Jackson didn't hit anywhere near the number of people being abused at his hands than like say a Cosby, but Michael Jackson also gave alcohol to like young boys and then asked for sexual, you know, it's like, I think we need to continue to have these conversations and not just sweep it under the rug and get down every time Billie Jean comes on in a store. Not saying don't dance to Billie Jean. It's just like, let's also look at critically at these artists and not just let them be up on these pedestals. But not with Janet. Not with Janet. She's such a baller. And what I'm left with at this point is, damn, I'm excited to get to know Janet's actual music, because these documentary, well, like I said, the Janet Jackson Taking Control documentary from 2011 highlights some of her music, but that's only up until 2011. Like she's still out there. She's still doing it. So it was cool to see something right up to date. But also heavy, you know, a bit heavy to hear our icon's story and have it be such treacherous waters. You know, family, Super Bowl, marriage. Yeah. I don't pity Janet. I think she's so amazing for sharing these parts of her story. And I thank her for being so vulnerable with us. And I'm so glad that she's resurging back into music. And generally, where I hear 70s, 80s influence all the time in music, especially synced music, like for commercials and stuff like that. So her specific sound is coming back. So I have a road trip coming up. I can't wait to have these albums lined up and just dive right in and go on this Janet journey and like get to really know her through her music and her lyrics. Because I think that's going to be a journey in and of itself. And it's not something that's being presented. It's just the music straight to the ears. That's why music is the best. It's like the least corrupted form of media. Love it. Okay. So I'm going to conclude that as our film section, Janet section. I want to talk about the music video, but I think I'm going to do that in the outro. So, yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely, if you're a Janet fan, then go you. If you're not, definitely she gives you so many. It's like each decade she's giving you something fresh and new, like almost genre defining albums. So, wow. Yeah, I'm so happy to be talking about her, especially on Black History Month. And maybe we'll return next year and check in on the Janet conversation and stuff. But for now, thank you for joining me, and we will bring it on home to the outro. Hey, listen, sometimes you gotta check in with yourself.
Check in with yourself.
Okay, hey. Here is the end. You made it. All right, so I want to talk about some things. So it was Super Bowl Sunday, not this last Sunday, the Sunday before that. And like I said in the Janet film section, I can't watch football for so many reasons. The NFL, I think, is one of the most plantation-like institutions we have up and running currently in the States. And I have a song about this, Welcome, on my Tragic Mulatto EP. It's like from CTE to the comments that the owners will make about the players, often the players of like the black players or players of color, the fact that you have all white owners and even like white coaches. And recently there was a black coach who filed a court case, and his case was along the lines of the NFL is systemically discriminating against black coaches and we deserve to be here and what the fuck. So Loretta Lynch, this like Uncle Tom wench, the NFL paid her a huge bag, and so she was like ruling on the case, and she dismissed his case, and she's a black woman, and the NFL paid this black woman who, they were happy to pay to defend them, and she dismisses the case of a black coach who is fighting for black folks. and whose whole legal team is white. It's just like, oh, it makes me so sick. We have how the average, shelf life of an NFL player is like 4 years or something like that. Injury, the fees that you have to pay from playing games in all these different locations, like you have to pay those state fees, all of these things that makes the NFL so not worth it. And fun fact, my father was an amazing football player throughout high school and college. He was recruited specifically by the Kansas City Chiefs. They sent him an NFL jersey with his name on it. And when he told us as kids this fact, we were like, what? Why didn't you go into the NFL? Are you serious? These are his exact role. These are oh my God, sorry. These were his exact words. I didn't want to get steamrolled. For a while I was like, and then now seeing his really great career as a teacher throughout decades, it's like, wow. Sure, it would have been a lot of money for a very short period of time and a bump of fame. But what is that when you can have your brain? And I also read an article a few years ago about there's like a Facebook group of thousands of women who were partners of NFL players, and the domestic abuse that they experienced from the sorts of like brain injury that these players are dealing with, like by way of the brain injury. The players will come home and then be angry and hurt, like physically hurt, and they'll take it out on their spouses, women. Like, how can I get down with this? Not to mention, I heard for this Super Bowl that like the tickets start at like 3 G's, like $3,000. Are you kidding me? So everyone there is rich. And we're all watching people bash their heads in. It's very medieval times to me. The history of lacrosse was natives would play until somebody would die, and then that person would be sacrificed to God. We don't have that same sort of spiritual thing going on in the NFL. It's just violence to me. That's all it represents. Not to mention the amount of NFL players who have abused women that we have proof of that are still allowed to play. Colin Kaepernick is still banned. And I have to mention how fucked up I think it is that Jay-Z signed a deal with the NFL to manage the halftime show, and then we got like everyone from Jay-Z's era plus Kendrick Lamar and Anderson .Paak, because like they in LA. It's like, what? I know it was like a Dr. Dre tribute and everything, and I have so many issues with that. If you know my song Free D, it's about how Dr. Dre physically assaulted a black woman who he used to work with, a rapper and radio TV host, and ruined her career. And Eminem was a huge part of that, like that culture of hating on women and misogyny. And so to hear that Eminem took a knee, like for what? Like what? Kaepernick is fighting for racial equality, and Eminem is at the halftime show taking a knee when the NFL could just let Cap play. Like, are you fucking kidding me? I just, like, not only do I avoid the Super Bowl bothers me so much. Now, I love Mary J. Blige. I love Kendrick Lamar. Anderson .Paak, ever since he went Silk Sonic, has kind of lost me. But I'm sure the halftime show is great. And I love Mary's new singles off of her new album, Good Morning Gorgeous. But I am not going to give the Super Bowl any of my views. No way. Not even by way of YouTube halftime shows. Nope. Not doing it. And for me, every Super Bowl Sunday from now on will be hashtag Janet Jackson Appreciation Day. And I don't want to hear shit about the Super Bowl. And that's my activism. And that makes me feel good because I live in a world that there's so little that you can control. So giving my time and energy to a Black woman who has been fucked by society instead of the institution that's fucking society, yeah, I'm all the way with it. So another thing I want to mention is that a few weeks before the Super Bowl, there was a 16-year-old Black girl, teen, found by the highway. I think it was the 110. She was shot to death and left by the side of the highway. Her name is Tioni Theus. Apparently, she was into golfing and tennis. Just like taking a moment, because shout out to her family and shout out to her spirit that has passed. Yeah, it's pretty egregious, I hope you've heard about her. If you haven't, definitely look up her story. Remember her name, say her name. They're speculating that she was a victim of sex trafficking. And what's interesting is that with some light research, there are these articles kind of surrounding this event. I'm doing air quotes, debunking the myth around the Super Bowl and sex trafficking. Now, I was at the 2014, was it 14? Yeah. FIFA World Cup in Brazil. And I saw firsthand the destruction and I heard about and, saw some things. The underbelly of this bright, shiny event is things like people's homes getting destroyed to build stadiums, and because of the nature of events like FIFA World Cup, like the Olympics, like the Super Bowl, they need a ton of temporary workers. So when there's this spike in temporary labor, that's when it's like that's when sex trafficking is how do I say, like easy to commit the crime of sex trafficking during these sorts of events where the attention is focused on X thing. So finding these articles, from like LA Times and like LA based mags recently about debunking the myth around sex trafficking in the Super Bowl, I don't want to hear it. And, I don't want to blame everyone who was at the Super Bowl or what went on at the Super Bowl or NFL or all of that stuff directly on this murder of this young Black teenager. But do I think that this happening around the time of the Super Bowl is something to take into consideration when considering the grisly death of this 16-year-old girl, Black girl? Abso-fucking-lutely. We've seen how the Super Bowl has played Janet Jackson. We've seen so much. We've heard so much. We've heard the comments. Don't let the inmates run the prison, monkeys, stuff like this from the white owners. I just don't get it. And I see so much male privilege wrapped up in the NFL and all that stuff. So, I get that this was the first Super Bowl in LA with the new stadium in Inglewood and all this stuff, and that all the celebrities were going to be there. But I don't know, kills my spirit to hear about it, to be honest. Everything from the halftime show. I even heard that Kanye was there with his kids and was like booed when they put him up on the Jumbotron. Like, don't boo a man who has his kids like in the it just all seems so gross and so white culture. I think that's what really bothers me, is that this is a big show, a big performance for white people, for majority white people to benefit from. And I see people of color and women and Black girls, and I'm sure queers and sex workers being negatively affected by this institution. So, what would have been so cool is to see like everyone in LA, like Beyonce and Jay-Z and Kanye and like Issa Rae and like all the Dr. Dre and Mary J, all of them. Make your own Super Bowl, make your own league, make your own football league, make the Black League or something like this, do what you did with Tidal. But this contract that we all have with the NFL, and I heard that kids get the day off, like some schools, they just gave kids Monday off because they knew they wouldn't be coming to school. This is a holiday. This is a celebration. Like, oh my God. I know it's controversial for me to say it, but fuck the Super Bowl, fuck the NFL. I don't have a problem with the game of football. I think the institutions surrounding it are destructive and horrible. So, yeah, I really had to get that off my chest. So, thank you for listening. And I feel better. I do. Another thing that I want to mention, I don't want to talk too much. Maybe next week I'll talk more about the music video that I released over the weekend. But damn, I also saw some shit that just made shit so much harder. And if you follow me on Instagram, it's likely that you've seen my posts about it. Excuse me. Water. Okay. So essentially, because my messaging around the video uses terms like mulatto and like probably less mulatto and more anti-racism and words like this. So apparently Instagram in June 2021 sort of sneakily, silently rolled out this feature, but they didn't tell us. They just added it to all of our accounts. And it's like, I'm going to butcher what it's actually called, but it's like a sensitive content control feature, something like this. That's what they're calling it. And essentially, it targets people of color who are talking about racism, fat folks who are talking about fat phobia, disabled folks who are talking about the experience of being disabled, activists, people who are doing such important work in our society are being, by way of this feature, are being silenced. And it was not clear. Okay, so I tried to post, this was 1 year. 2 years ago, I applied for the grant, didn't get it. A year ago, I applied for the grant, got it. Been working this entire year on this music video. So, this is the day to do the post and go to do the post. And there's no message at all. I hit share and then it goes to the normal screen and there's no like post it or like any sort of thing. So it just wasn't posting. Tried it on my mom's phone, tried it on my phone, tried it a bunch of different ways. And each time I have to tag 15 people. So I read more into it. My mom was helping me too. We did some research into it and we saw some technical things. Oh, okay, you can shorten the video. You can try not tagging people in the post. You can try a few different things. Oh, we removed the content warning part of it too, in case that was triggering the flag. None of those worked. And then it became clear again, there was no message that was clear, like your content is not, like, due to the sensitive content, none of this. I just couldn't put my post up for like a day and a half. And then finally figured out, post it without the text at all, without any message. And then once the video's posted, go in and add all the tags and all the meat of the content later, the message. But this experience was so frustrating, you know what I mean? But it really also opened my eyes, and I've seen a little, like I've seen actually a lot of friends, especially queer POC friends, shadow banned from Instagram. So I knew that was happening, and I heard about it, especially when it came to speaking out about Palestine and just it's fucking ridiculous. And so I already knew that this was happening, but and that's privilege, right? Like, but no, like, I don't know. I assumed I was going to be able to just post this. No, they didn't want me posting this. And I've done research into Facebook before, and I know that they tend to deem themselves gatekeepers of what content is sensitive content. And there's the systemic racism right there. When you have young white men in Silicon Valley making decisions for the rest of the world about what sensitive content is, you're going to have an issue because we don't have representation there. So, and don't even get me started about like how racist the algorithms can be and that sort of thing. It's just wild. So thank you to everyone who hung in there and who has supported my music video. Again, I'm not going to go into it now because this episode I think is long enough, but it has been such a journey and a challenge, putting it out, bringing it into the world. And I had so much help, and huge shout out to the crew and the folks who have supported me throughout the way. This is the best art that I've ever done, and this work defines me like nothing I've ever seen before. And so I'm so proud of this video. And so to have to fight but it's, this is the experience of being Black or being a woman or being, part of a marginalized identity and trying to get your story. Not only do you need to do the work, you need to fight for it to be seen. And so all of you who have commented, or even like something as simple as reacting to a story or an emoji, it means so much to me. It shows me, yes, I appreciate this content. And I want to say I don't need that, but I do. Like, it's just like you put your whole life into these projects, and for it to just kind of exist on Instagram, like, doesn't feel like enough. I feel like Instagram is such a problematic platform for artists, but thank you to those who are, and not just on Instagram, on Facebook, on other platforms, like, who are sharing and promoting and reposting. It means so much to me. So I try not to miss any repost ever. but it's really hard because I need a lot of space from Instagram. Okay, that's enough. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I know this was a really intense episode, but yeah, felt good to do. This has been episode 5, so we made it past the month mark. So thank you, listeners, for sticking with me, and so nice to have you supporting me. All right, that's the Low Power Mode podcast with Breezy, and until next time.
I've been in low power mode. In low power mode. Been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear. I've been in low. I've been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear.